How's it going, people? Well, for those of you who don't know, my name's Jay, and this will be my second video that I put up on YouTube. I would like to thank a couple people that commented. I've got nothing but good feedback from the first video, and I had a few requests to share my views on a few other subjects. Now, there's a lot of information, and I've looked over and researched a lot of information, so if you heard about some of this stuff and I'll leave a few facts out, I'm sorry, but I'm going to give you as much as I can. I'm going to go ahead and make a series of videos, and in this one I'll be basically covering my views on Nibiru and the Reptilians and everything of that nature. Now, once again, I'm not a scientist or anything like that. It's just the research I do is the same thing anybody else can do. It all comes down to basically gathering information from multiple sources, comparing the similarities, researching the validity as much as possible. Let me just say one thing. When it comes to the Illuminati and everything else like that, there's going to be information that's not going to be available to us. Okay, if it was that easy to get, everybody would know about it already. Okay, but there are things that you can look at that's right in front of your face. There is a lot of information out there that is accurate, yet there's so much disinformation by our government, or the Illuminati rather, that people dismiss these things anyway. You have David Icke, has been talking about the reptilians since the 90s, and he still to this day, he tours around, he speaks on numerous occasions, and people don't take him seriously. There are a lot of people that do now, but even so, it's just looked at as, crazy talk by most people. Now, first, you have to understand that the whole reptilian theme, this is something that is part of our ancient history, something that, around the world, there's a lot of symbolism reflecting this. It started, I have some things outlined here that I'm going to go over. I'm going to use it as a point of reference. The first thing I wanted to talk about was around 1850 or so, there was a discovery in what's current day Iraq, okay, which back in the day was Babylon. Now, what was discovered was a bunch of Sumerian tablets, thousands of tablets. Sumerian is one of the oldest written languages we know of. Now, there was multiple people who translated these texts, but among the translations, there was also some hieroglyphics that were carved in stone on the wall. And that's one of the things I find really fascinating, because in these hieroglyphics, amongst other things, they have a map of our solar system with our 9 planets and their relative spaces around the sun as we know them today. Now, we only figured out this within this last century or so. We've been able to confirm where these planets are and describe them and know what they look like by use of space probes and everything else. They didn't have that technology back in the day. Now, not only did they have the 9 planets, but they also had a 10th planet, and that's what was named Planet X. And the name they gave this planet was Nibiru. Now, the way it's written, they say they got this information from what they call the Anunnaki, or beings from the sky. Now, this is what we would know as the Reptilians, okay? And they said that Nibiru is the planet that they're from, and every 3,600 years or so, it passes into our solar system. Now, this to me is one of the scariest theories out there. I do believe there might be a fair amount of truth to it. You have all your biblical flood stories, Noah and the Ark, and all around the world you have these biblical flood stories, okay? Now, just as much information as you can find to support the idea of Nibiru, you can find just as much debunking it as well. Now, I don't really think that the government would come out with it. Of course they wouldn't. If they're saying, okay, millions of people are gonna die regardless, well, here's what's coming, they're not gonna say anything. Now, what you have to keep in mind is, I may not know what exactly we should do if this is coming, but if this is, you have to understand that we've survived it before, and there's not a whole lot you can do to prepare for something like that. You're talking about world cataclysms, okay? And it's probably more to do with luck and being in the right place at the right time more than, okay, well, what part of the country or world am I going to have to go in? Let's see what we got here. Alright, now, when it comes to the Anunnaki, they allegedly had a hybridization program. Now, when we started out, they apparently bred with us, with our human females. And they also, tampered with our genetics and whatnot and created us as a slave race. Now, I don't know how much truth there is to this, but this is, what our ancestors are saying. Like I said before in a previous video, I believe that they had a way better grasp on things than we did. Now, when we talk about hybrids, all these videos you see with reptilian shape-shifting eyes and everything else like that, a good source of information on the reptilians is David Icke. He's dedicated his life to this cause. Naturally, he has a lot more information on these kind of things than I do. But just as, somebody who lives everyday life like you and I, these are my thoughts on it. Now, according to Icke, they have the 13 bloodlines that have this hybrid genetic code. Alright, and these are where we get the shapeshifters and everything else like that. Part of that we have the British royal bloodline, which, according to Icke, is the central operation of the reptilians. Now, reptilians and Illuminati, they can be interchangeable. They're one and the same. You also bringing this back to the Babylonian Brotherhood, which, current day Iraq, which makes me wonder, well, we had 9/11, we invaded Iraq, if there's a connection there. I'm sure there must be. Now, a lot of people, when you start seeing these videos of the reptilian shape-shifting eyes right in front of you, or you see the camera glitching and the reptilian form coming through, and they try to blame it on old camera equipment or compression video, this, that, and the other, or even Photoshop. Now, I'm not going to say that there's no Photoshop reptilian eyes out there, but the ones I've seen, you'd have to be pretty talented, and if you're that talented, I don't know why you're spending so much time photoshopping an eye, but what I get curious about is when you see an interview, i.e. Bush Sr. and Bill Clinton, that CNN had on their website, and you see Bush Sr.'s eyes clearly change to reptilian right in front of you, and then CNN takes this video off their website and only puts the transcripts up, well, then you got to start asking yourself questions. Alright? And same thing with Bush Jr. His eyes are this bright baby blue, and time again he gets caught, with these brown reptilian eyes. Now, see, even me talking to some of my closest friends about this kind of stuff, there's so much disinformation and people are so afraid to be ridiculed about this kind of thing that once you start talking about it, they don't want to hear it because they don't want to be laughed at or they care what people think about them and so on and so forth. But that's exactly how we were programmed to think about life. Now, what I did when I was trying to explain to a friend of mine, about the reptilians and the shape-shifting eyes and things of that nature, what I did is I pulled up Google right in front of them and I did a little experiment. I typed in Bush Jr. and I clicked the images on Google. And what I did is I looked for websites that were specifically had nothing to do with conspiracy or aliens or anything to do with that. And the reason why I chose websites like this is they don't have any reason to doctor their photos. They're not trying to sell you on anything. They're not trying to convince you of something. All right, and what I did is I found one of Bush with his bright baby blue eyes, and then another one with his brown reptilian eyes. And once again, these are on websites that aren't saying anything about conspiracy or reptilians. So you have to ask yourself, okay, why would they Photoshop? And they wouldn't. There's so many examples of this kind of thing that it gets hard to ignore after a while. Now, another point I really wanted to touch on is we talk about disinformation and, people are afraid to be ridiculed and stuff like that, and the way we are taught to think about things. Now, a big part of that is, of course, you got the media because they control the media. So whatever the media says, we usually believe, and that's a problem in itself because that's where a lot of people get their factual information from. But if you look at movies, like a perfect example is The Matrix.